At the end of the Qing Dynasty, the Liao Dynasty's golden boots reappeared in the antique world. A poor boy from the mountains, apprenticed to the Liulichang, embarked on a treasure-hunting journey from the frontier to Jiangnan. The antique world is full of eerie and dangerous waves, with ups and downs. Along the way, he has developed a keen eye for discerning truth and falsehood, eventually becoming a big shot and wealthy. Can it be considered a preface? You are listening at novelfull.audio. I am a person who is not very good at telling stories, and I find writing with a pen to be a boring thing. Until a relative passed away not long ago, I went to the crematorium to bid farewell and spend the night with the spirit. The winter in the north is very cold. In the crematorium, facing the clear night sky, I suddenly feel the waste of time and the brevity of life. That night, I suddenly remembered news reports from a few years ago that a beautifully constructed ancient tomb in Shaanxi had been unearthed and reappeared in the world. Archaeologists are puzzled that there is no coffin in the tomb, only a sentence written on the tomb door. The tomb will be reopened, and there will be no fewer faces. We don't know what story happened to the tomb owner during his lifetime, but this sentence makes people feel that time is easy to age and youth is fleeting, so I decided to write a book, and even when I'm bored, I can flip through it. Don't wait until I get old or 100 years later, when there are no memories or traces of life in this world. After all, thousands of years later, all humans can remember is words. I don't have the ability to change and entertain others, I can change and entertain myself. It is said that wherever there are people, there is the martial arts world. What is the martial arts world? No one is saying it too clearly. Not all of them are dressed in fresh clothes, angry horses, swords, and shadows. Perhaps each industry has its own niche. This book is about the ups and downs of the antique industry in the late Qing Dynasty 100 years ago. These stories were told to me by my grandfather when I was a child. He told them in a very convoluted and bizarre way, because the people in the book have a deep connection with our ancestors and families, so these stories have always been fresh in my memory. In this story, there are adventures, miracles, mysteries, legends, struggles, power schemes, emotions, love, recklessness, and joy and enmity. Even dreams. As for the tomb boots, they are just an introduction. What I am writing is about human nature and every different life in the world of turmoil. In my early years, I wandered the rivers and lakes, floating in the sea of commerce. Although I had a passion for books as a child, the first time I picked up a pen to write an article could only be considered a graffiti work. However, it may also bring a bit of fun and life enlightenment to you who have no intention of reading this book. In the era of fast food, I like the saying, governing a country is like cooking small dishes. A bowl of soup and ingredients are also very important. I endure slowly, you drink slowly, because the story is long, time is too short, and we are too busy at that time. The sky was still very blue, but the carriages and horses were not slow either. The strong ships and cannons of the foreigners have already knocked open the gates of the late Qing Dynasty, and the Qing government is struggling to survive in the wind and rain. The people are also busy in their hard work. On a sunny day with warm spring flowers blooming, Liu lay on the rocking chair teasing the octopus in the birdcage. He was the owner of an antique shop in a glass factory outside the Peace Gate in the capital city. Since the establishment of the Liuli factory by Emperor Yongle of the Ming Dynasty, the production of imperial quills has flourished. By the late Qing Dynasty, this place had become the largest gathering place for antique merchants in the capital. I haven't conducted any research on when antiques became an industry. Since the birth of humanity, there has been a natural love for beauty and curiosity, and a habit of cherishing old things and recalling past events. It is said that humans spend most of their time living in memories of the past, so they are almost always nostalgic. However, items from the past can provide a place for the soul to rest. In ancient times, after death, most people would wear their beloved items for burial, and at that time, their wealth was probably stones, shells, bead strings, and so on. Or buried together with the stone tools and weapons used during his lifetime. These things have many unearthed records around the world. Every time I see stone tools and weapons that shuttle through time and space thousands of years ago in the museum, carrying ancient traces of soil and vicissitudes of use. Many ancient bead strings can even feel the warmth of history and time. I am particularly sentimental and even daydream, unable to imagine what they have experienced. And as humans began to have posthumous possessions for burial, a peculiar profession gradually emerged. Tomb raiding. It is said that the earliest ancestor of tomb raiding was the son of Duke Huan of Qi, the first ruler of the spring and autumn period. He was a merchant who sought revenge and could not be considered a tomb raider. As for the later records of Wu Zixu's tomb whip, it indicates that a long time ago, at least during the spring and autumn period, humans had a tradition of excavating tombs. At that time, it was tomb excavation, strictly speaking, not tomb theft. But they dug the tomb and couldn't throw away the gold, silver, and jewelry that were buried with them. These treasures will only return to the human world. I think maybe by this time, there has already been a certain circle of collecting burial objects. Later, in the late Eastern Han Dynasty and the Three Kingdoms period, Cao Cao set up a Jingxi way. Stealing money from tombs and using it as military pay could only be considered minor matters, but it was just exaggeration in the public. Although Cao Cao was called a traitor, he was actually a hero, and he still had to be shameless. Can Cao Cao still beat the Western Chu overlord who used hundreds of thousands of troops to open the tomb of the first Qin emperor before robbing the tomb? So, Cao Cao is unlikely to be the first person to rob tombs. For thousands of years, he has always been a Jin Shaowei, and his facial makeup in Peking opera is also a big white face. He's just carrying the blame. In recent years, unearthed records have proven that there were already people in the Warring States period who engaged in professional tomb raids for the sake of money. This antique circle is far more complex than we imagine. In the late Qing Dynasty, antique shops were already very prosperous. True or false, bizarre and varied, various objects flood the martial arts world, forming a huge circle. This book does not encourage tomb raiding, and even has little to do with it. Just now, I wrote a few paragraphs about the inheritance of tomb raiding, but it's just that I love it more sincerely. This book is about the life experience of transitioning from a poor boy to a wealthy antique tycoon. It's about how to develop a keen eye and understand the process of authenticity in the antique industry. It's not about teaching people how to dream. In the antique collection industry, he relies on his eyesight and courage. This tells a true story because 360 lines, antiques are king. In any industry, if a worker wants to do something good, they must first sharpen their tools. Opportunities are always given to those who are prepared, and antique shops are no exception. Our Chinese culture is vast and has a long history. We hope there are things you like to see and listen to. Hear many of the things circulating in the antique shop come from underground, while my story is about being in the human world. Chapter 2. Octopus Can Speak. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jiangnan, on the hillside. The sky was dark and gloomy, with strong winds blowing through the bamboo groves and rustling leaves. Thunder echoed through the clouds, and a sense of awe filled the air. A few raindrops the size of copper coins fell, causing a slight pain on the face. One after another, thunderbolts and lightning illuminated everyone and also illuminated the various treasures piled up at the entrance of the tomb. On the coffin board inlaid with jade pieces, two nearly transparent white snakes lay on their faces, with green and eerie eyes, watching these tomb raiders amidst thunderstorms. How could this pair of white snakes not have dodged? Zhang Wenlong and Yu Meng stood together, surrounded and fighting by dozens of death row inmates released from prison. A lightning bolt pierced through the sky, soaring like a dragon for a long time, followed by a thunderbolt, piercing straight into the earth. In an instant, the rainstorm pours. Both sides turned red-eyed. Yumengang's legs were just hooked by a death row inmate with a rope and he couldn't move, almost dying. Now his legs are free from restraint. Yu Meng is very angry. He walked up to the corpse of the condemned prisoner who was holding a rope and wrapped it around the neck of the corpse. Yu yanked the rope tied to the dead man and swung it. Under the rainstorm and lightning flash, he swung the gaunt corpse of the dead prisoner. A dead person with blood dripping from his body and a long braid covered in blood, was swung by Yu as a weapon. Yu Meng rushed towards the besieged prisoners of death, dead bodies dancing in the air under the lightning and thunder. Yu Meng, who was disheveled and still holding a dead person in his hand, was illuminated. On his face covered in blood, rain and blood mixed together and kept flowing down. Bang, the gun rang. It is a tubular magazine rifle produced by the German Empire in 1884 in the hands of Mr. Chen. Governor Chao trembled with fear. Zhang Wenlong stood in the rainstorm with the blood-dripping black iron short knife, watching the prisoners slowly retreating. That day, the rain in Jiangnan was no longer clear. The story goes back a few months ago. Black Charcoal was a bit hungry, and he came to the capital from the north to make a living during the Guangxu period of the Qing Dynasty. He has been in the capital for several days and hasn't found any work yet. He has already spent a few dollars in his pocket and is starving. When a person is very hungry in a foreign land, they often do not stop to rest to save their limited energy. But on the contrary, the more hungry one is, the more they usually prefer to go to the bustling city. People have animal attributes, and from the experience of the ignorant era, we often have more opportunities to find food in bustling places. In short, on this day, Black Charcoal strolled to the Liulichang factory. Black Charcoal looks 17 or 18 years old. He doesn't look black. He just grew up in the mountains. The sun in his hometown is poisonous, and he particularly likes to bask in the sun. He often grazes sheep on the hillside for a day, and his skin gets very dark from the sun. His friends like to call him Black Charcoal. Actually, he has a name, called Zhang Wenlong. Before he becomes famous, let's call him Black Charcoal first. He didn't sunbathe that day because he was very hungry and had to find work to earn money. He could see Mr. Liu basking in the sun and teasing his younger brother in front of the antique shop from a distance. The octopus bird saw Black Charcoal walking in the cage and said to Black Charcoal, "Good luck, good luck." The first time Black Charcoal saw the colorful relics on the roadside of Liulichang and the first time he saw a talking bird, he curiously stood next to the birdcage and watched. The birdcage was placed on a white marble flower table in front of the store, and Lu Ye's recliner was nearby. Lu Yi looked at Black Charcoal and saw that the young man in front of him was about 17 or 18 years old, with a small braid. He was tall, thin, and a bit messy, but his eyes were lively. His facial features were delicate and angular, but his face was slightly black. In spring, the sandstorms in Beijing are very strong, and the black charcoal on both cheeks is blowing a bit red, even a bit haggard. "Hey, have you seen it before? Where did it come from?" "Feng Tian, I've heard of talking birds before, but I didn't expect there to be one. There are so many things you haven't seen before, 2-headed snakes, 3-horned cows, everything in the world is unique. What's a bird talking about?" With such a simple dialogue between the two, the story begins. Strange to say, Lu Yi is not averse to this young man who has never seen the world before. People in the antique shop love to argue and chat, which may be an occupational disease. Only through more language communication with the other party in a short period of time can more detailed information be captured to better understand the product, which is suitable for any negotiation venue, and the same goes for antiques. This habit can also affect daily interactions with people, and he began to chat with Black Charcoal and Lu Yi, who also loves to chat. "What are you doing? Have you found a job yet?" "Not yet, there are too many people looking for work. The war is chaotic, so be careful when you first come out." "Have you eaten yet?" "No, I've been hungry for 2 days now." "Oh, can you drink alcohol?" "I don't know how to drink, but I stole it once when I was a child." "Then come on. Have a drink with me. I'll treat you to dinner. It's noon and I'm hungry too." Black Charcoal is not a timid person, just a bit skeptical and looks at Sixth Lord with his head tilted. At this moment, Lu Yi had already gotten up from the lounge chair. He hung the bird cage on the hook on the tree, turned around and locked the antique shop. He then took Black Charcoal's hand and walked directly to a small tavern across the street. Many people are like this, they just want to find someone to accompany them while drinking. It is said that these people are all because of loneliness. I guess Sixth Lord was lonely that day. Lu Yi entered the tavern, and the owner chatted with him. At first glance, Lu Yi was a regular guest. He found the innermost table against the wall and sat down, with his back against the wall and his face facing the door. This was his habit for many years, and later Black Charcoal also got used to sitting in this position because this habit later saved his life. Black Charcoal sat down, a bit reserved. He wasn't ashamed of himself, it was Lu Ye's enthusiasm that made him feel a bit embarrassed. Mr. Lu ordered 4 dishes, 2 meat and 2 vegetables, and 2 small dishes. He also ordered 2 pots of old wine. Eat it, eat more, are you starving? If it's not enough, take it again. Okay, thank you, sir. Lu Yi is not very old, in his 40s, with a northern accent and a hint of Beijing accent. He is quite humorous and thin, but not black and has a very lean appearance. Black Charcoal later said that the only impression he had of seeing Sixth Lord for the first time was that his eyes had eerie fur and he was not angry or arrogant. He blinked very slowly and was very easygoing, but there was always a murderous aura in his eyes unintentionally. And he was a businessman. Lu Yi poured a glass of wine himself and also poured a glass of wine for Black Charcoal. Perhaps because this tavern is close to the Liulichang factory, the wine glasses used are also very elegant. Black Charcoal carefully looked at the wine glass, and there was a hint of red on the blue and white porcelain. There were also many transparent dots on the body of the glass. At that time, Black Charcoal didn't even know it was called Linglong porcelain. Linglong porcelain was probably produced since the Yuan dynasty and was popular during the Guangxu period. This was a very complex porcelain making process. The process involves first carving the patterns on the body, then applying thin glaze throughout the body, and at the same time, the holes can be smoothed and filled, but the parts of the holes are transparent, hence the name Linglong porcelain. When I was young, my father-in-law used this type of glass every time he drank alcohol. The bottom of the cup is inscribed with the Kangxi era, which is actually a tribute from the previous dynasty of Guangxu. It left a deep impression. Lu Yi drinks very slowly and doesn't like to talk much when he drinks. I like to look out the window with my head turned, feeling lost in thought, and I don't eat much. I occasionally take a few sips of wine. Grandpa, respect you, I did it. Black Charcoal stood up, bowed, and took a gulp. Drink slowly. For those who haven't had any alcohol before, drinking like this will make you drunk soon. Cough, Black Charcoal coughed a few times due to being choked by the wine and agreed, but his face did not turn red, and it was not as black anymore, a bit pale. I like to eat side dishes. When I'm not full, the dishes are gone, which makes me still unsatisfied. Eating is like this, and socializing is also like this. But today you eat hard, get full, manage enough, and learn to eat less in the future. Lu Yi began to fall in love with this young man. Perhaps it was the heroic act of Black Charcoal standing up and bowing down with a sip of strong liquor that made him seem familiar, or perhaps this person, although from the countryside, was very polite. Black Charcoal didn't quite understand the meaning behind what he was saying, he just nodded politely, and besides, he was really a bit overwhelmed by the urgency of this drink just now. They were chatting and unconsciously drank a pot each. Black Charcoal is not swept away by the wind and clouds, he is just picking meat to eat because he knows that meat can carry hunger, he needs to reserve energy, and his next meal has not yet arrived at this moment. The guests in the small tavern were all full, with a southern and northern accent that was a bit noisy. Suddenly, Lu Ye's expression became somewhat stern. He listened attentively to the conversation between the 2 people on the adjacent table. The 2 people on the adjacent table are both in their 30s, dressed simply but with alert expressions. They are not locals, they are chatting in a low voice. I heard that something has come out again, a Liao Jin gold mask and a gold boot. It's strange how there's only one boot, isn't it reasonable? The goods are still in their hands, the asking price is too high. A slightly overweight person said, have you seen anything? I didn't see it. I went back 2 years ago and heard what old Li said after drinking. After his son's death, he didn't work for a few years and now he's giving up his profession. He's still living in Dawa village by himself. I really want to take action, I'm afraid I won't be able to move it. I should go and take a look. If not, I'll move the black one. But I heard they're also quite tough on their hands, so we probably can't. Is old Li still alive? He has a wide range of information. He wants to study it. Well, we'll go to Fengcheng in a few days. Lu Yi looked out the window with his eyes fixed on his ears and vaguely heard these things. When he heard the golden boots, he had a heart and he knows Lao Li from Dawa village in Fengcheng. The two of them were whispering, their voices getting quieter and quieter, as if discussing something. I also looked around very alertly to see if anyone was listening to them, and then lowered my head to eat. They didn't drink alcohol, ate quickly, finished eating and left. Lu Yi looked at Black Charcoal and smiled, what's your name? Grandpa, my surname is Zhang and my name is Zhang Wenlong. They all call me Black Charcoal. Well, it's quite dark. Have you eaten enough? I'm full now. He is already full. Today, Mr. Lu ordered a lot of dishes and a large quantity. What are you planning to do in the future? I don't know, I plan to find a job and raise a talking bird when I make money in the future. Good kid, have you ever read a book? When I was a child, I attended a private school and learned some Chinese characters. Later, when my family's fortunes declined, I came out to make a living. Black Charcoal has really read books and knows words. And he has a bit of talent, but his memory is excellent, and he can almost remember things at a glance. Black Charcoal couldn't help but feel very close to the middle-aged man in front of him, not only because he treated himself to a full meal, but also because he had a magical power in him. Lu Yi speaks as if he is far or close, unfathomable and somewhat mysterious, and not so vulgar. Listening to him is very interesting, and I feel that he is both approachable and trustworthy. If you can't find any work tomorrow, come to this place to find me, help me with chores for a few days, and come with me on a long journey. Dare you? Black Charcoal also heard the conversation of the person at the next table and felt that Lu Yi said he wanted to go out, which may be related to this matter. Black Charcoal hesitated for a moment, his heart horizontal, okay. I'll come tomorrow morning. Teach me what I don't understand. Thank you, sir. Ha ha ha, good, you have the courage. It suits my taste. Let's finish our meal, let's go. You're a bit drunk, where do you live? I don't have a place to live. I've been living under a bridge by the river these past few days, and the weather's not cold anymore. You can stay at my house today. Black Charcoal was really drunk, and he didn't refuse. He had already vaguely felt that there was an intersection with this person in his future life, and this person might change his own destiny. After Lu Yi finished speaking, he called on his team to calculate the accounts and walked out of the tavern with Black Charcoal. He picked the birdcage from the tree, fed it with water and food, carried it with one hand and held on to Black Charcoal with the other, and walked down the street towards the direction of the Peace Gate. Mr. Lu's home is not far from the antique shop, it's only half an hour's walk away. A courtyard with a locked door, he opened the door and entered. The area inside was very large and tidy. In the yard, there is a stone table, several stone benches, several white marble flower tables, with several pots of orchids on them, and a koi fish pond in the corner, where several koi are colorful, swimming around. There are several purple bamboo trees planted by the koi pond, and an ancient tree by the wall, which is very rugged. This tree is very thick and has sprouted in spring, growing tender green leaves. Black Charcoal didn't know what tree it was, but he felt that its bark had many scars, like the marks of knives and axes, or the scars of a tree shot by an arrow, with potholes and even vicissitudes. The courtyard is paved with blue bricks underground, and there is a water well in the left corner of the wall. The blue stone at the mouth of the well is made into an octagonal shape, which is larger than a normal well, and a pulley is mounted on top of the well. Sixth Lord opened the door of the room and said to Black Charcoal, "You can stay here tonight. If you're hungry for dinner, let's go out and eat. I'll stay here myself." "Okay, Grandpa, I'm full now. I shouldn't be hungry anymore." They ate very slowly at noon, and it was already past 2 p.m. after finishing, mainly because Black Charcoal was already drunk. If he hadn't persevered, he might have fallen asleep on the ground. If a person drinks baijiu for the first time, he will get drunk after drinking half a gin, not to mention 1 gin. It is said that alcohol tolerance is something that is gradually developed. Lu Yi and Black Charcoal walked into the wing room together, which was also very tidy. Upon entering the small hall, Black Charcoal saw 2 antique chairs placed by the wall. Inside the inner room was a arhat bed with complex carvings, and beside the wall was a mahogany top cabinet for bedding. Black Charcoal particularly noticed a painting hanging on the wall, which seemed to be an octopus, perhaps a crow. The bird rolled its eyes, made a few faint strokes, and looked rebellious. The color of the paper had turned yellow for some years. Black Charcoal looked at the painting and curiously asked, "Grandpa, how strange are the eyes of this bird drawn? Rolling their eyes, how could they be drawn like this?" Black Charcoal is drunk, and he has more courage to ask anything. This was painted by a monk for over 200 years. Isn't that very valuable? I can't say it's worth it. This painting is half true and half false. How can there be falsehood in a painting? Black Charcoal looked bewildered. This painting was originally exposed and framed by someone, which means removing 1 layer of the real painting and turning 1 painting into 2, both of which are real. This is the second layer, so the color is lighter than the first layer. Some parts of this painting have been touched up with ink. This painter is called Zhu De, also known as the 8 Great Mountain People, and is very famous. Black Charcoal listened in a daze, and getting drunk made him feel even more hazy. "Grandpa, I want to learn from you. I can do it for free. You just need to teach me a few moves. I am very capable and hardworking." Black Charcoal felt that this was an opportunity and he wanted to apprentice. In that era, there was a great emphasis on apprenticeship and learning skills. Although Black Charcoal was black, he was not foolish. He thought this 6th master was a master. He also felt that this person was very close and had a sense of dependence. Although Black Charcoal is 18 years old, he is still a child with little experience in the world. Do you want to apprentice? Let's go out and come back. Let's take a look before we talk. You're drunk, go to bed. Your luggage is all there. Get a good night's sleep. We're leaving tomorrow. After Lu Yi finished speaking, he pointed to the top cabinet with his finger. He smiled and patted his shoulder, closed the door and went back to his room. Although Lu Yi did not directly agree to accept him as an apprentice, his demeanor had already accepted him as an apprentice, but there may still be some further tests. After all, it was a chance encounter, and Black Charcoal knew that if it weren't for the strength of the wine, he probably wouldn't have dared to say that he was a disciple. He was really drunk and dizzy. As soon as the 6th master went out, he fell down on Arhat's bed without taking off his clothes and slept until the next morning. That day, Black Charcoal slept soundly. After falling asleep, he had a strange dream. "I dreamt that the octopus on the painting was rolling its eyes and talking to him, saying something that he couldn't remember. Later, the octopus turned into a hawk and carried him flying in the sky. After waking up, he seemed unable to remember his dream clearly. He just remembers that from that day on, he began to enter the world of antique shops, and his life was destined to be full of ups and downs." Chapter 3. Heading north along the way. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next morning, at 5 o'clock, Black Tan woke up and was thirsty. After drinking baijiu, many people would be thirsty at night. Black Tan was no exception, and it was the first time to drink so much wine. He got up early, pushed the door open, and walked out of the room to find water to drink. It was already dawn. He saw the octopus cage hanging on the tree, the octopus combing his feathers, and a pair of thief-like eyes turning to watch the black charcoal come out. The gate of the courtyard has also been opened. Lu Yi stood on the steps of the main room, looking at the sky as if he was thinking about something and waiting for someone. "Grandpa, early morning, good morning, pack up and we'll set off soon." "Okay, Grandpa. I don't have much to tidy up, I'll go with you wherever you go." "Well, one more person will arrive later. Let's go together and take a car to Fengcheng," said Lu Yi casually to him. Black Charcoal agreed and scooped a bucket of water from the well in the corner, drinking a whole stomach of water with a ladle. The well water was sweet. After drinking water, he filled the copper basin on the stone table with water and washed his face, then stood in the yard and carefully looked at the yard. This is a standard layout of a Beijing courtyard house, but it is larger than a typical courtyard house. A quadrangle courtyard is composed of a main room, east-west wing rooms, and inverted rooms. The four-sided houses surround the courtyard in the middle, forming a mouth-shaped, closed loop. There is a shadow wall facing the entrance of Lu Ye's house, with peonies, flowers, and birds painted on the wall. Although Black Charcoal grew up in the mountains, his family was not poor when he was young. He knew and heard a lot, and also had some artistic skills. He stood in the yard, admiring the grass, trees, and carved corridors. After greeting, he didn't disturb Sixth Lord. At this moment, the sound of horse hooves stopped in front of the gate, sigh, followed by the sound of brakes. Then a strong man in his 20s with a beard walked into the yard, and Sixth Lord welcomed him. "Have you brought everything with you?" "All right. Okay, let's go." Sixth Lord, he picked the bird cage from the tree, filled the bird food jar with water and bird food, and slipped it out with Black Charcoal, locking the door. Black Charcoal's family has raised horses and knows the quality of horses. This is a carriage pulled by 3 horses. At that time, cars pulled by 3 horses were quite common, but this car was larger than the average body. One of the 3 horses, a red horse, was riding on the rafters, while 2 black horses were pulling carts in front. Their muscles and bones were extremely strong, and they were in their prime. The 3 horses were dragging a large cart. During the Qing Dynasty, people from the north traveled by either riding horses or cars, while in the south, they traveled more by boat. At that time, trains were already available, only for the section from Beijing to Tianjin, to transport coal. There is another interesting story here, from Tangshan in the late Qing Dynasty in 1881. On the railway from Tangshan mining area to Zugazwang Wharf, a long coal transport train was not pulled by a locomotive, but by mules and horses. This event is known as the horse-pulled train incident in history. At that time, there were steam locomotives in the world, and the European Industrial Revolution had been going on for many years. But all Chinese people feel that this big, smoking figure is ominous, and the royal family also believes that the locomotive is driving straight, shaking the dongling. It was not until 1882 that steam locomotives on the Tangshu Railway were officially allowed to operate. Lu Ye's carriage is a real carriage. The car cabin is much larger than a typical large car compartment, and it is very spacious. The seats on the bus have also been made of soft leather, making it comfortable to sit for long distances. The rear panel can be adjusted to an angle for lying down, and there is also a sunroof on the roof. At first glance, it is carefully designed and modified, and the body is very sturdy. His surname is Zhao, you can call him Fourth Brother. His name is Black Charcoal, new here, Lu Yi said to Black Charcoal and the strong man. "Hello, Fourth Brother," the Fourth Brother smiled and nodded in return. He is holding a long whip in his hand. The whip is made of bamboo and hung with a leather rope, used to drive horses. However, there is a metal section on the handle of his whip, which is different from a normal whip, and there is not much black charcoal to look at. Opening the car door, Lu Yi and Black Charcoal jumped onto the carriage. With the sound of a whip, I drove out of the city and headed north amidst the dust and sand on the rammed earth road in the capital. For a long time in the future, Black Charcoal and Sixth Master spent together in this carriage, traveling through the mountains, rivers, and Jiangnan beyond the Great Wall. Black Charcoal carefully examined the carriage inside. The carriage was not made of ordinary wood, but was framed with hard rosewood, revealing beautiful patterns. The frame and roof have been reinforced with iron bars, and there is also a sunroof on the roof that can be closed to allow people to escape. The interior decoration is luxurious and comfortable. Black Charcoal could tell that Lu Yi is a person who knows how to enjoy himself. Even if he travels a long distance by car, he won't be too tired. There is also a mezzanine on the carriage wall, inside which there is a long knife and some wrapped long things. There is a bow hanging on the wall of the carriage, with over 20 arrows in the quiver. There is still a large suitcase, a large jar of wine, and essential daily necessities. They drank and chatted all the way, watching the scenery along the way, teasing the octopus, and it was very pleasant. Hungry and sharp, stay at the hotel in the dark. Sometimes Lu Yi would also rush the carriage for a while to replace Si Gu. This fourth brother is also very humorous and not dull. He laughs all day and seems to have nothing to worry about. Many times, Black Charcoal sat on the front seat of the car, chatting with him. He quickly became familiar, and the fourth brother also liked this young man very much. Along the way, Black Charcoal saw many beautiful rivers and mountains that he had not seen before. Although the mountains in the north were not beautiful, they were magnificent. Spring. The weather in the north is also getting hotter day by day. All things are revived, the mountains are green, the river water has become civilized, and it is clear. The trees have started to grow green shoots, tender green and very beautiful. The afternoon sun shines warm on the face and body, and occasionally there are groups of migratory birds chirping and flying by. Black Charcoal felt the daily growth and changes of himself. It is said that reading 10,000 books is better than traveling 10,000 miles. The customs and knowledge along the way are all things that he cannot learn in the mountains of his hometown. He doesn't regret walking out, although the road ahead is long and uncertain. What he saw and heard along the way, if he didn't understand, he would ask. Along the way, he learned to drive and ask for directions, and learned to meet people and things. When resting, I also learned how to ride horses and shoot arrows, and even learned how to drink alcohol slowly. After walking and stopping for about a week, they arrived at a small northern city called Fengcheng. Not far from Fengcheng, Lu Yi found a friend's house where he stored his carriage and his 8 brothers and stayed overnight. The next morning, the 3 of them walked along a mountain road with their bags on their backs for more than half an hour, and entered a mountain village called Dawa Village. This village has over 20 households in total, located in a remote mountain ditch. They are all low grass houses, with courtyard walls made of loess and stones, and some are just simple fences. Although the trees have sprouted, the spring in the north is still a bit cold. Farmers have just started sowing, and the fields look desolate. Lu Yi walked to the door of a household by the village, which was open. He shouted twice, "Brotherly, are you at home?" In no time, an old man walked out of it. "At home, at home. Yo, 6th Lord, rare guest, please come inside, please come inside." The old man who came out was tall, in his 50s and 60s, with a dark face, a loud voice, and a strong physique. Possible reasons for long-term alcoholism include cloudy and slightly yellowish eyes. However, if you casually glance at someone from the side, your eyes will still sparkle with a cold chill. There is a scar on his left cheek, which is not very noticeable due to the many wrinkles on his face. At first glance, I have experienced many stories. The old man reached out his big hand covered in calluses and tightly held onto 6th Lord's hand as he walked into the room. A very ordinary northern residential house. There are 2 old-fashioned cabinets in the room, which are painted black. On top of the cabinet, there are two happiness-shaped bile bottles with chicken feather dusters inserted inside. There is a New Year painting pasted on the top of the Kong, and a Kong mat is laid on the heated Kong. Due to long-term overheating, some parts of the Kong mat have already been burnt. The Kong is still very hot, it looks like breakfast has just been finished, and there is still some warmth left on the Kong. In the north, hot Kong is used for heating, and iron pots are used to cook rice. When the rice is cooked, the Kong is also hot. To this day, the living habits of many residential areas in the north are still the same. The old man enthusiastically asked Mr. Liu and the three of them to take off their shoes, push them onto the heated Kong, and sit down, brewing a pot of tea. "Where's my sister? Law?" Sixth Master asked. "I haven't had it in the past 2 years. The girl married out of town, and I'm the only one." The old man also sat cross-legged on the Kong, and while he was talking, he started smoking dry cigarettes inside the dry tobacco bag. Mr. Six exchanged a few pleasantries and got to the point. "I heard there's a golden boot coming out here. What other masks are there? Have you heard about it, brother?" "Ha, you have such good news. It has spread to the capital so quickly. How do you know it's from Fengcheng?" "I accidentally heard 2 people with Fengcheng accents say it, and they mentioned you. Although I only mentioned the surname Li and Dawa village in Fengcheng without mentioning your name, I immediately guessed it was you. You should know about this, and the thing should also be around you. Who made my elder brother famous? I'll come and take a look, and I'll also come and see Brother Li." Liu Yi gently put a high hat on old Li. "It is necessary to mention Fengcheng here. Fengcheng area is one of the gathering places for antiques and old goods in the north, and this story also starts from Fengcheng. For thousands of years, many old objects from the Liao Jin period and the Hongshan culture period have also been unearthed and passed down here, and various legends have also been passed down in the antique circle. The ancient Fengcheng area was once a breeding ground for northern ethnic minorities such as the Xiongnu, Xianbei, Khitan, and Mongolian. At that time, the peak city of the Qing Dynasty was already very prosperous, surpassing Qingda prefecture at one point. Liu Yi complimented Lao Li and said that he took out a stack of Guangxu longyang from his arms and placed it on the edge of the Kong. "Brother, accept it. It came empty-handed. I was supposed to bring some good wine, but I drank it all along the way. Let's use this money to buy some wine for ourselves." Lao Li looked at the silver coins placed by Liu Yi on the edge of the Kong, and he knew the amount and value of these silver coins. During the Guangxu period, there were already silver bills, but the common people were still accustomed to using silver dollars. He had no joy or fear on his face, but rather a hint of disgust and sadness. "He, since Da Qing's death, money has had little meaning to me. I can eat and dress warmly now, and I can live in a house. It's no use asking for money. You can keep the money, don't be polite." Liu Yi felt a bit embarrassed and said, "Brother, I've been overthinking. I know that the Qing was killed, which has dealt a significant blow to you. This is because my brother came here to visit my brother. He has nothing to do with other things. Take it to buy some wine." Upon hearing Liu Ye's words, old Li's face softened a lot, but in fact, the change in expression was only a fleeting moment. Chapter 4. Stolen Tombs of Kings. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lao Li took a puff at his dry tobacco bag and slowly said. "You guessed it right, it was indeed a local occurrence, and there was only one golden boot, a golden mask, and a scroll painted on silk from the Liao Dynasty. Do you still have a scroll?" Liu Yi listened attentively. "There is also a scroll, which was made by Chang and his team. The item has not been sold yet, and the asking price is very high. It has also been targeted by several groups of people, including those who come to buy, steal, and rob. A few days ago, they had a battle with several people who came to grab boots, and they drove those people away." Liu Yi thought to himself, I don't know if these few people are the 2 people he met at the Beijing restaurant. He continued to listen to Lao Li's lecture. "I'm worried that you won't be able to handle it well, and there might be trouble if you don't," old Li said calmly to Sixth Master. "This should be a large tomb. It's impossible to have just this one thing." "Is there anything else about porcelain?" asked Sixth Lord. "There are also some Liao Dynasty tricolor porcelain, leather kettles, and some pearls and jade, most of which are slightly damaged. If they were found, they would immediately be separated and sold, leaving only these valuable items in their hands." "Oh, why is there only one?" Lu Yi earnestly discussed with Lao Li. Black charcoal could tell that Lu Yi and Lao Li had an extraordinary relationship, and they didn't have much taboo when speaking. At that time, black charcoal understood that one should not judge people by their appearance. Lu Yi usually looks rebellious and unruly, but he speaks respectfully to a ragged old man in this remote mountain valley. And the demeanor and words of this old man's every move and gesture are not quite like those of a lifelong farmer. Don't underestimate these people from the streets and villages. There are hidden dragons and hidden tigers inside, with unfathomable experts. They can save you many detours with just one sentence, or they can lead you into the abyss with just one sentence. This tomb has some origins. It is said to be the tomb of a prince of the Liao Dynasty. The tombs of Liao Dynasty princes were mostly built on mountains as gates, with carved mountains as halls and mountains as tombs, continued old Li. When they build cemeteries, they also pile up many low peaks with stones to prevent feng shui from leaking out, forming a dragon-chasing water pattern. In order to hide wind and water, the 5 elements are not lacking. However, ignoring the prolonged wind and rain, many of these stacked stones were washed into the mountain valleys by the rain, so following these traces can precisely find the location of the king's tomb. With the addition of inquiring about nearby historical legends, it is not difficult to find the location of the tomb and underground palace. After Lao Li finished speaking, he took a sip of black tea. "Oh, how did someone discover it? How could there be only one golden boot?" Sixth Master asked curiously. Lao Li looked out the window at the distant mountain and said, "This tomb is over 100 miles away from here, embraced by the mountains. It is said that many people have been staring at it for hundreds of years but have not found it. Decades ago, some southern barbarians arrived and found the location of the underground palace. They found that the tomb door was made up of 2 huge stones, which were piled up at the entrance and could not be opened. They pretended to pick stones on the mountaintop and dug holes vertically from the mountaintop, finally penetrating the underground palace. When they found the underground palace and were about to steal, they were discovered by the common people and a conflict broke out, driving them away. At that time, the Yamen arranged for the people to bury the damaged cave entrance on site and restore it to its original state. It is estimated that the other golden boot was taken by the southern barbarians during that time. Due to their hasty departure, one may have been left behind, as the people did not enter the cemetery and did not know what was missing inside. Until recently, when Chang and his team reopened from the mountaintop and entered the underground palace, they were all hollowed out, but only found one boot. Lao Li paused for a moment and let out a dry cough twice. Continuing, he said, "This was originally done without anyone noticing, but because it was a hole dug in winter, the backfill at the entrance was clearly mixed, and the grass had not yet grown. It was still discovered and reported to the authorities, but no one knows who did it. But they sold the stolen goods, and those porcelain pieces flowed into the market. There was no airtight wall, and paper could not contain fire. Now Chang and his companions dare not live at home. It is said that in the county town, no one knows where the golden boots are." Lao Li finished speaking in one breath and paused for a moment. "Well, if you want to see the goods and have ideas, I can help you find Chang. You can talk to him on your own. If you can't reach an agreement, don't blackmail him. He is my distant nephew, and I also want to live here." And it is said that a Mongolian prince also knew the news about this boot. He was thinking about it and not causing trouble. "After all, I owe you a personal favor many years ago. I'll go there for you. If anything goes wrong, I can't stay here either. After Lao Li finished speaking, he looked at Lu Yi and Si Gu, stopped talking, put on his shoes, got off the heated Kong, and stood on the ground of the house. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi paused and said, "Our friendship for over 20 years, let's not talk about who owes each other favors. Besides, although I tried my best that time, my nephew Da Qing was still spared. It's all fate plays tricks on people. I'm also alone now, with only the fourth son following me and this newly acquainted young man. I am curious, but also itching and hot-eyed, not too greedy for wealth and status. These external things, my brothers have long been open to them. Well, come and take a look at my old brother, take a look at things on the way, and also bring them out to see the world and relax." What Lu Yi said is very emotional. He spoke lightly about this matter, leaving no trace of his true thoughts in his heart. It wasn't until a long time later that Black Charcoal realized that Lu Yi was determined to win this golden boot when he went out of the mountain, because he wanted to use it to save someone's life. "Okay, that's it. Let me tidy up and head with you to the city. I know where they probably live." I haven't been in your carriage for many years." After Lao Li finished speaking, he picked up a copper cigarette bag, knocked the tobacco pot on the sole of his shoes a few times to remove the cigarette ash, and inserted it into his waist. Taking out a bundle from the cabinet, he took out a short knife with a sheath from the gap and put it into the bundle. He put on his coat and looked at a few people, waiting for Sixth Master to leave the Kong. After finishing his last sip of tea, Lu Yi put on his shoes and went down to the Kong without hesitation. He picked up the stack of silver coins and stuffed them into old Li's bag. "Take it. Let's go. The car and horse are left in the city. The mountain road is too narrow to get in. Let's go out and back to the city, and I and my brother will also relax and go for a walk." After Lu Yi finished speaking, he took old Li with one hand and turned around to nod at fourth brother and Black Charcoal. They left old Li's house and headed straight for the county town. That day, when they came out of Lao Li's house, they walked on a gentle mountain path. A wild rabbit kept walking on the path ahead of the four of them, walking several hundred meters before jumping into the grass. Lao Li smiled and said, "The horizontal wolf is following the rabbit. The rabbit has been blocking me along the road. It seems that my trip is not auspicious, and there may be a bloody disaster." Lu Yi and his team also discovered rabbits, and he naturally heard of this folk rumor. I also smiled. Everything is constantly changing, and good or bad luck can change at any time. Whenever wealth is abundant, there will always be disasters. There is no smooth sailing when it comes to doing big things. My elder brother's passion remains strong and he is not yet old, so there is no need to be so depressed and addicted to cause and effect. This trip is also a journey out of the past world. If you can't, come live with me in the capital. The two of us can still play chess together, have a drink, and have a companion. Lu Ye's words always make sense, and he is also very good at comforting people. Black Charcoal knew that what Lu Yi said came from the bottom of his heart. He might really want to take old Li to the capital and have a companion. They must have gone through many things together before. Although we never mentioned each other when we met, those things were definitely unforgettable and deeply ingrained in our bones, and we didn't want to reminisce about them. Black Charcoal knows that Lu Yi must have many friends, but the characteristics of his business may be that he has very few true confidants to talk about. He is actually a very lonely person in his heart, and he also needs to confide and have friends. Lu Yi and his group of four walked an hour on the mountain road and went to a friend's house in the suburbs of the county to pick up the carriage. The Octopus exclaimed with joy when he saw Sixth Lord come back. "Good luck, good luck." Lao Li carefully looked at the carriage, touched the horse, and couldn't help but sigh. These are not the original horses anymore. Yes, those horses are old and can't bear the long journey, nor can they bear to sell. I have someone in the capital who keeps these horses. I just bought them 2 years ago and they are in their prime, replied the sixth prince with a smile. Old Li looked a bit lost at the distance. Sixth lord bid farewell to his friend who was hosting the carriage, and fourth brother drove the carriage and pulled them into the city of Fengcheng. At that time, this county town was already very prosperous in the north, with streets crisscrossing and numerous shops. They first went to the old master temple in the city and burned incense. Even in normal times, people come and go in the city, all kinds of people, and there is a clamor for buying and selling. It's as lively as the overpass in the capital, and black charcoal is dazzling. For thousands of years, I don't know how many stories have happened in this small northern town. Lu Yi and his team found the largest inn near the Guandi temple to stay. At that time, the inns in the north had no beds and were all heated Kong beds, which could divide several rooms. Each room could light a fire, and living there was very comfortable. A regular inn is like a large Kong, crowded with many people, called a big cart shop. Lu Yi chose to live here because Lao Li said that Changzi and his family are active in this area, which is also the best condition. The innkeeper settled the carriage, filled the horse with hay, and a few people washed their clothes briefly. Then, sixth master called out old Li and the others to drink. He was not too eager to find Changzi. After walking for over an hour, he was indeed hungry. There is a restaurant called Jufu Restaurant not far from the inn, which is considered a relatively large restaurant in the local area. Every time Mr. Lu comes, he eats here. The restaurant has 2 floors, and the dishes taste good. The environment is also very hygienic. A group of 4 went up to the 2nd floor to request a private room, ordered a few dishes and a few pots of wine, and began to eat and drink. A few people spoke very interestingly, and Lu Yi spoke incessantly. When he didn't speak, he didn't say a word for a long time, just lowered his head and drank. The fourth brother speaks with wit and humor, making people laugh whenever he speaks, as if he has never had any worries. As for Lao Li, he spoke more bluntly, going straight and feeling a strong sense of lag. He often stopped and frowned as he spoke. Black charcoal is only responsible for pouring wine, because he can't get in touch either. Let's eat first, I'll go find Changzi later. He has been wandering here for a while, and there's his stronghold here, said Lao Li. He took a bite of food, maybe he hasn't been to the city for a long time, or hasn't had any delicious food in a high-end restaurant for a long time, so he eats more. However, it is still very elegant and did not wolf down. Besides working in the countryside all year round, Lao Li's face was dark and rough, and his every move was very measured and vigorous. Don't worry, wait until you're full. This kid is very good at finding a place. This is really a great place, with everything to eat, drink, and have fun with. Lu Yi spoke and looked out the window at the bustling traffic. The weather outside the window has become a bit gloomy. Chapter 5. Changzi and his person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lao Li took a sip of wine and belched heavily. Yes, these people are fugitives who do nothing but fight, smash, and rob. Tomb raiding is just a hobby, living on the tip of the knife. Those who have today and no tomorrow will surely know how to enjoy it. Lao Li said as if he remembered something, and then sighed. It can't be said that Changzi and others are like this. Even if people are like this, they will change. If the poor become emperors, wouldn't they also be extremely extravagant? After Lao Li finished speaking, he frowned and looked out the window. Lu Yi noticed that old Li might have remembered something unhappy and quickly interrupted. Drinking and drinking, we haven't seen each other for several years, but my brother's health is still so good. Lu Yi changed the topic. Everyone casually chatted about local customs and traditions. After all, walls have ears, and restaurants are a place with a lot of personal clutter, not suitable for discussing secrets. After eating and drinking enough, the few of them went back to their room to rest. When Lu Yi woke up after being confused for a while, he found that old Li was gone. The door was closed and he asked the waiter, who said he had left shortly after returning. Lu Yi didn't care either. He knew that old Li must have gone to find Changzi. Lu Yi returned to his room and went to see his octopus. He raised this octopus from a young age and brought it with him wherever he went. Lu Yi said that animals are more reliable than humans, and he loves animals very much. At that time, people in Beijing were influenced by the children of the 8 banners and liked to carry cages and frame birds. The culture of flowers, birds, fish, and insects had a deep origin. Beijing people enjoy playing with birds, such as playing with reds, indigo chin, and larks, as well as playing with thrushes and eagles. Playing with birds has strong regional characteristics, even now it is the same. Northeast China likes to raise wax billets and scallops, Inner Mongolia likes Bai Ling, Xi'an likes Hu Tu Feng, Yunguichuan likes thrush, and Nanjing likes embroidered eyes. Beijing and Tianjin, on the other hand, still prefer indigo chin and red wine more. Of course, many birds have now become protected animals and cannot be raised casually. Lu Yi only liked bago. Later, when he got drunk once, Black Charcoal asked him why he liked bago so much. He said, "Because this bird can talk, when it's lonely, it can talk to me." Half an hour later, Old Li brought a person and knocked on the door. The door opened and the two of them entered Mr. Lu's room. Lu Yi and the other party both looked at each other. This person was in his 40s, of medium build, with a dark blue face and a white mist that seemed to cover it. He had a muscular figure, squinting his eyes to look at people, and was dressed in shorts. The spring in Fengcheng is still very cold, and he wears very little. It looks like he has practiced kung fu. He was holding 2 iron chests in his hand, spinning back and forth, with a sound of tsang, 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 and a braid coiled behind his head. Later, when Black Charcoal met many people in the antique circle, he found that many tomb robbers had this kind of expression, like people who were sucking on D, hanging their faces. Perhaps it's because I often go out at night and work underground without seeing the sun, so my face turns pale. These people also like to drink and stay up late, and almost all of them have a blue complexion, mixed with a gray-white layer of haziness. These are Black Charcoal's conjectures. In short, this person, in our current words, is not like a good person, exuding a hint of mean and evil energy. This is Mr. Feng from the capital, a friend of mine who has been with me for many years and has the strength to come and talk to you sincerely. His name is Changzi, my nephew. Old Li briefly introduced the two of them. The two exchanged pleasantries and sat on chairs in the room, drinking tea. "I won't beat around the bush, can you see the goods in my hand? What's the approximate price?" Sixth Master was straightforward. "It seems possible. It's not currently on me, so I can show it to you. However, you need to show your sincerity first. This Chang Zi doesn't play cards according to common sense." He slanted his eyes and said slowly as he looked up and down at Lu Yi. "He didn't bring the goods over, so it's understandable that he didn't bring them with him. After all, he has a strong defense against others, but we need to first see how strong Lu Yi is and how irregular he is." Lu Yi hesitated for a moment, with no expression on his face, and said, "Can't we just look at the goods first and then negotiate the price?" "No, there are too many people coming to shake it. Our brothers worked on this together, and I want to give them an explanation. Before looking at the goods, we should first check our strength." Chang Zi's attitude was very firm. At this moment, Fourth Brother and Black Charcoal both entered the room and stood nearby listening to their conversation. Chang Zi turned around to look at Fourth Brother and Black Charcoal, still sitting happily drinking tea. "Okay," said Sixth Master, giving Fourth Brother a glance. Fourth Brother bent down to take the suitcase from the table and handed it to Sixth Lord. Sixth Lord opened the box, which contained dozens of shiny gold bars and a stack of silver bills. "Are these enough?" Mr. Six remained expressionless. "Well, I'll go back and tell my brothers, wait for my message." Chang Zi also remained expressionless. He didn't say whether it was okay or not, but when it came to the matter, he froze. "Okay, I'll wait for your message. The earlier, the better." I have something urgent to attend to and return to the capital. Chang Zi turned around and left without much ado. Before leaving, he said a meaningful word to Lao Li, "Uncle, take care of yourself." He pushed the door open and left. A few people remained silent in the room for a few minutes, unsure of what would happen next. For the first time, Lu Yi felt so passive and controlled by others. Is there really something in this world that money cannot buy? I haven't seen any kind of treasure in the capital before, and it's not so troublesome. I feel a bit angry in my heart. Lao Li hesitated for a moment and said, "Brother, I see this matter is not easy. I feel like you should go back and not touch this thing. Let's leave today." "Oh, why?" Sixth Master asked. When he was about to leave, he said to me, "Take care of yourself." This implied that I was leaving you. Your gold bar was exposed just now, and it turned white. He may not be planning to sell your things, but to attract old customers and take your money, which is very dangerous. In northern dialect, old customer means boss. Rich people, no one calls them that anymore. Decades ago, in the countryside, business owners were called old customers. Lao Li is an old martial artist who expressed his own opinion. Lu Yi actually felt something unusual, but he also felt that it was difficult to continue without doing so. My eyebrows furrowed a little. Do they still want to seek wealth and harm their lives? I originally planned to just come and see. In that case, I will see their methods and definitely see things. Lu Yi is not a pure antique merchant. He becomes stubborn and has a strong determination. He is not just in the antique business in the capital, he also has other industries, which are all risky professions. He has seen the sea of fire and knives. Brother, I know you're tough enough, but if you think it's worth it or not, you're not cheap and have enough money to spend. There's no need for porcelain to touch stones, and there's no need to risk yourself. Old Li has an elder demeanor and speaks in consideration of the sixth lord. Fourth brother remained silent. He knew it was for nothing. No one could stop what sixth lord had decided. Fourth brother was just preparing for the next step. Lu Yi lowered his head and pondered for a moment. I'm staying here and won't change places. I'll wait for 3 days' news from him. Brother, you can pass on the message to him, and after that, you can go home. Thank you for coming so far to work for me. After speaking, he took out a gold bar from the box and stuffed it into Lao Li's bag, which he had never left. Lao Li didn't speak, nor did he refuse to decline. Okay, I'll finish it for you and leave. This person is my nephew, and I can't interfere. He only has one elderly mother to rely on. He used to be a yamen runner, specifically responsible for catching tomb robbers. Later, he was imprisoned for corruption and illegal activities. After coming out, he directly engaged in tomb raiding, including several fugitives on the internet and tomb raiders he had previously caught. He often robs and steals business travelers, doing all sorts of bad things. I saw his expression and tone. There was no intention of sincerely trading with you. Perhaps a few buyers were hanging in one golden boot. I don't know exactly what he wants to do, but I reminded you to be careful. After speaking, Old Li turned around and left the room. After Old Li left the room, Black Charcoal couldn't help but ask. Grandpa, what's the origin of this old man? He seems very clear about things, but he looks timid and greedy. If you give him gold, he will continue. He won't harm us with them, will he? Mr. Lu looked up at Black Charcoal without saying a word, and then looked out the window. After a while, as if talking to oneself, I know him, he's not that kind of person. Why did he just leave like this, regardless of us? Just say something for us and take our gold. Who knows what he wants behind his back? Black Charcoal is also very intelligent. Although he has not been deeply involved in the world, he likes to think about the ins and outs of things since childhood. Perhaps this is also why he later became a big collector in the antique industry. During this month of getting to know each other and getting along day and night, he regarded both Sixth Lord and Fourth Brother as relatives. At this time, he was also considering the safety of Sixth Lord. This is how things in this world are, and how people interact with each other is also very subtle. Some people can quickly become friends at first sight, and many people who have known each other for decades are like passers-by. Fate is a wonderful thing. Black Charcoal has been with Mr. Liu for about 10 days, but it feels like they have known each other for a long time, and they are the closest family and friends. Of course, it will be his master in the future, and this master is also trustworthy. Liu Yi stood up and picked up the birdcage. He looked at Ba Gu and then outside the window, feeling lost in thought. At that moment, Black Charcoal didn't know what was on Liu Ye's mind. He just knows that this future master doesn't seem to be happy, he seems to have a lot on his mind. He already has a lot of wealth that others pursue in their lifetime, why not be happy? Perhaps at that moment, Liu Yi was thinking about how to plan for the next step, or perhaps he remembered the past Buddha said. Every heart is born lonely and incomplete, and most people spend their lives with this kind of disability. Black Charcoal felt that his future master was also somewhat incomplete in his heart. The sky outside the window is a bit dark and gloomy. There was a faint sound of wind and thunder in the distance. It seemed that a rainstorm was coming soon. Chapter 6. My surname is Li, Li from Old Li. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Liu Yi put down the birdcage and poured a cup of tea to them, saying, "You two sit down, I'll tell you a story. 20 years ago, I met Lao Li. He was originally from Shandong and learned excellent martial arts skills when he was young. When he grew up, he joined the army near the capital and became a small leader in the barracks. However, due to his too upright personality in never bullying the people, he offended his superiors for some things, and their superiors often made things difficult for him, so he became a deserter. He didn't go back to his hometown, but went to the northern peak city to open a piece of land, farm and hunt for a living, and married and had children, which made him happy. But the war was chaotic, and seeing the people of the world struggling, he was determined to pursue a career. At that time, he was already in his 30s and full of ambition. He had no intention of continuing to farm and hunt at home, so he left his wife and children and went alone to the south to join the Taiping army. Due to his bravery in battle, he later became a guard for Hong Xiuquan of the Jiangnan Heavenly King's mansion. At that time, Jiangnan was called Jiangnan Prefecture, and some people also called it Jiangnan. Not long after, he found that the Heavenly King's mansion was also more corrupt and extravagant, and the Taiping army had forgotten its original intention of serving the people. From top to bottom, it was not enterprising and greedy for pleasure. He planned to leave the Taiping army and go back home to farm. At this time in Jiangnan, I met the boss who had framed him before. That boss was captured in a battle between the Qing army and the Taiping army and also surrendered to the Taiping army. Because that person would flatter and flatter others, he still became his superior in the Taiping army of Jiangnan Prefecture. He continued to cause trouble everywhere and became even worse, falsely accusing him of being a spy of the Qing army. The Heavenly King was also preparing to punish him, but he was angry and quietly left, and he fled. But when he returned to his hometown in the north, he found that his wife and children had been taken by bandits for 2 or 3 days. The neighbor said that the bandit was preparing to send a tribute to Qing Ting, and said that his wife and children were long-haired family members. That bandit leader used to be his superior's brother-in-law and had also been active in the capital area. They had known each other before and had some conflicts. In a fit of anger, he approached the bandits to demand justice, but in the end, he became outnumbered and was caught by mistake. The bandit leader did not kill him, nor did he offer them to the court, because after all, they were also bandits themselves and their foundations were not clean. If they were sent to the Qing court, perhaps these bandits themselves would also be arrested. So the bandit leader secretly escorted him, his wife, and children to Nanjing to exchange rewards. After being escorted to Jiangnan Prefecture, they were imprisoned by that superior. During those days in prison, he was beaten and tortured by that superior, and he thought he would definitely die. Who knew that at this time, there was a rebellion between Yang Xiuqing and Wei Changhui in Jiangnan, with blood flowing like a river and chaos, causing everyone to be in danger. A prison guard usually knew him, admired his character, pitied his fate, and found an opportunity to secretly release him. The prison guard also took advantage of the situation and fled. After coming out, he found a place to take care of his injuries for a few days. On a dark and stormy night, he found a place to detain his wife and children. The guards at that place are not strict, and Jiangnan city has become a mess. Maybe the guards think that a child and a woman should not escape, so they are careless. He killed the guards and rescued his wife and child. His son's name is Qing, and he was in his teens at the time. During his escape, he was unfortunately shot dead by his superior and pursuers, and he was also seriously injured. I was still very young at that time. I was working in Jiangnan prefecture and happened to pass by when I stepped in to save him. That night, it was a rainstorm night, with lightning and thunder. If it was not for the downpour of rainstorm and darkness, we might not be able to walk away. He was unconscious for a day, and when he woke up, he told me that his surname was Li from Old Li. He said he owed me a life, and if I had the chance to meet him again in the northern Peak City, he told me his address in the Peak City, but I didn't care. Not long after, he sent his wife to his parents-in-law's house in a mountain valley in Fengcheng, and then he changed his face and returned to Jiangnan prefecture. At this time, the rebellion in Jiangnan was basically quelled, but the Qing army was attacking the Taiping army in various places, and Jiangnan was already in turmoil. He took advantage of the chaos and found the home of his superior, killing his family of 5. He avenged his son and secretly returned to live in the mountains of Fengcheng. Later, the Anglo-French coalition entered the capital and set fire to the old summer palace, causing a chaotic situation. Old Li saw that there was no way out for farming, so he thought about making a living. However, in a chaotic situation, what good business could there be to do? Because he is smart and eager to learn, feng shui is highly valued in the construction of artificial houses and tombs in the countryside. In his spare time from farming, he thoroughly studied a burial scripture and showed that the cemetery didn't make much money. He decided to join a group of desperate people in tomb raiding, but he never stole tombs locally. During this period, it is said that the bandits who once arrested his wife and children also died at his hands. Because he is righteous and fair, and has a good eye. After all, he has traveled extensively and seen many different worlds, so he has a great reputation in the tomb raiding industry, and everyone respects him. In the Fengcheng area, Old Li is very famous when mentioned in antique shops. I later started doing antique business and often went to Fengcheng to search for goods. I met him by chance during a transaction and was very surprised. So, we kept in touch again and he often helped me. But due to the pain of losing his son back then, he lost his fighting spirit and worked on tomb raiding for several years, feeling that it was ultimately a shameful act. At this time, both his father-in-law and mother-in-law had passed away, so he gave up his tomb raiding business and continued to farm and hunt for a living, living a simple life. Later on, he gave birth to another daughter, who is now married far away. In the past 2 years, his wife also died of illness, so he borrowed wine to alleviate his worries and lived in a daze. He is actually a hard-working person, with a clear personality of love and hate. He will not be greedy for money and forget his righteousness, and he will not stand idly by when we have something to do. He's just getting older, and I don't want him to be implicated in any disputes. I just want him to live a peaceful life for the rest of his life, and I shouldn't have approached him this time. Do you think such a person could betray and harm us? Liu Yi finished speaking in one breath, swallowed his saliva, took a sip of tea, and finally said these words to Black Charcoal. Black Charcoal listened attentively. He never expected this ragged old man to have such a legendary and thrilling experience. He finished listening like a story. When he heard Liu Yi ask him, he said, "If this person were like this, he would definitely not harm us. He is a good person, but he just left like this. Take a look, although people can change, they won't change, and I won't misjudge people, said Sixth Master calmly. Black Charcoal remained silent, feeling uneasy and unwilling to let Old Li help Lu Yi find someone. He looked relaxed and easily took a gold bar. After all, Black Charcoal is still considered a child at this time. He still doesn't understand the good and evil of human nature. He thought at that time that gold was the most precious thing in the world and could be exchanged for food. Because he was still starving half a month ago. He still doesn't understand that in this world, besides gold, there is also loyalty in interpersonal relationships. Suddenly, there was a spring thunder outside, which shook the roof tiles. 3 people looked out the window at the same time. It was raining. Chapter 7. Endless Recognition of the Past. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In spring in the north, there is not much rainfall. It usually doesn't rain much, but today it's heavy rain. The rain hits the dirt road and creates a mist, causing pedestrians to take shelter. Lu Yi and the 3 of them chatted in the room for a while, waiting for news from Lao Li. He knew that Lao Li must be out looking for Chang Zi, who must be living very close. After a while, Lao Li returned to the inn with an umbrella in his hand. He leaned against the wall and said to Lu Yi, I told Chang Zi that you will leave in 3 days and check the goods before leaving. He agreed and found a place to meet. Tomorrow, he will come to the inn and tell me the specific location. Okay, we're here. We can't just go for nothing. Even if he sets up a sword mountain or a hongmen banquet, we still need to go, said Sixth Master calmly. There is always a kind of person in this world who may not be reckless, but they do enjoy adventure and may even spend their entire lives searching for excitement and meaning in existence. Lu Yi is probably this kind of person. He likes to gnaw on bones when eating meat. He said that the harder it is to gnaw on, the better the meat tastes, although it may be a bit exhausting. If there is no stimulation, he will feel empty and lonely. Chang Zi, because he didn't treat me as an outsider, even revealed a few words to me. A prince from Mongolia also fell in love with this boot and sent someone to come and see the goods. Although we contacted, we haven't met yet, so even if you see the goods, you may not be able to negotiate. He gave me some face, and I don't think he dares to have any bad ideas about you. Old Li continued. Yeah, he dare not refuse to give face to my elder brother, right? Although he has already washed his hands, he is still his senior. If you had started digging earlier, it wouldn't have been his turn. Sixth Master joked a bit. He knew that when Lao Li robbed the tomb, he wouldn't work locally. Rabbits didn't eat grass near their nests, and digging graves near his own house was too troublesome. Yes, I did think a lot about not touching this tomb at that time, mainly because I felt that this tomb had been stolen by the southern barbarians before, and I think there shouldn't be much inside. Not to mention that, you should also be prepared for the worst. After I accompany you to see him, I will go back home, said Old Li. Okay, I just feel like my brother is getting older and doesn't want to get involved in too much trouble with my affairs, said Sixth Master from the bottom of his heart. He also wanted Old Li to stay by his side. When he saw him alone, he planned to take him to live in the capital, and his business also needed help. A few people in the room carefully calculated the various possibilities of seeing Changzi and looking at the goods together. Lu Yi felt that the risks and possible events were under control, so he stood up and said. Well, that's all for today. Soldiers come to stop us, and water comes to cover us. Anyway, it's not dark yet. Let's go out to visit the Peak City. Black Charcoal is young. When he heard about going shopping, he couldn't help but clap his hands and say that there is a process from growth to maturity. At this point, the rain had already stopped. The climate of Fengcheng is dry and windy in spring, and spring rain usually does not last long. The diffuse moisture covers up the dust and sand on the dry road, and the afternoon air is very fresh after the rain. This is the best season for spring, with neither cold nor hot in the afternoon. There are several main streets in Fengcheng, and several horizontal streets to the east and west. There are numerous commercial shops, and transactions are very prosperous. The Guandi Temple Fair here is very grand every year on the 13th day of the 5th lunar month. Shaving, divining, juggling, selling ointments, selling mountain goods, selling various commodities, as well as various snacks, people are also diverse and lively. The temple fair was also like a large market, which was a gathering place for urban and rural trade at that time. Although it's not yet May 13th, the streets are already bustling with people coming and going. It seems that this rain has not affected people's desire to go out. Lu Yi and a few others walked around the street. They first went to a clean bathhouse nearby to take a shower, and then bought new clothes and shoes for everyone to change into. They also had their hair cut and tidied up very well. Although fourth brother is thick and sturdy, he is already very energetic. Old Li and Black Charcoal have cleaned up, but they are completely different from before. Especially Lao Li, who shaved his head, combed his braids again, and shaved his beard, looked much younger. A few people were strolling on the street, and among various merchants on the roadside, there were also several antique shops. Outside the antique shops, there were scattered street stalls piled up with some old items. Mr. Lu and the others took a look. He plans to teach Black Charcoal more about the rules of the antique shop. After all, he wants to accept this disciple, and in the future, Black Charcoal will also have to make a living in the antique shop. He taught him while walking and watching. For example, when looking at things, one cannot touch them by hand, because in case an antique falls to the ground and is broken, it cannot be explained clearly. Wait for someone to put things down before you pick them up, don't bargain on things you don't really like. If someone agrees to pay the price, you have to buy it and so on. In fact, these rules are still in use in the antique industry, mainly to avoid trouble for both parties. As for the jargon in the antique industry, those jargon are not something that Black Charcoal must master now, and they will naturally understand after prolonged exposure. Old Li saw Sixth Master giving a serious lecture to Black Charcoal and smiled. He didn't need to listen because what he dug out was definitely true. He will never go to an antique store to buy goods. He used to have no capital to ship. But Lu Yi is different. He never studies tomb robbing, nor has he ever stolen a tomb. He spends his whole life researching the identification of authenticity because he is an antique dealer. An excellent antique dealer not only needs financial resources, but also vision and circle. And this insight is the most important, because with it, you will also have financial resources and enter higher circles. Developing good eyesight not only requires a lot of practical experience, but also requires a deep understanding. The most negotiation-savvy and cunning group of people in the world are antique sellers. You don't know which one they say is true or which one is false. The final decision on how far you go will always be based on your eyesight and your ability to see and speak. Exercising good eyesight not only requires extensive knowledge, but also requires a lot of practical comparison between new and old items, as well as opportunities and courage. Ultimately, the process of learning antiques is a practice. Antiques exercise human nature, and playing with them is also human nature. Some people never understand how to be played with by antiques in their lifetime. They are blinded by greed, or they avoid seeking medical treatment, hide their ears and steal bells, and do not understand reflection. Without desire, one is strong, with virtue, one can carry things, with understanding of the past, one is not poor, with greed for the past, one is not rich. The above words are all the truths that Lu Yi said to Black Charcoal. Black Charcoal stared in the mist, listening in a daze. Many years later, Black Charcoal became one of the few major collectors in the circle. When I was drinking tea with my grandfather once, he sighed and said to him, "The words that Sixth Lord said to him that day are precious and will be used for life." Unfortunately, at that time he still couldn't understand. At that time, there were very few imitations in antique shops across the country. Because of the prosperous era of collection, during the late Qing Dynasty, the economy was in a state of decline, and the common people couldn't eat enough. Who would buy antiques? There are authentic products all over the ground, who would go to the cost of sacrificing their proximity and effort to fabricate them. So there aren't many imitations. At that time, many of the blue and white porcelain from the Guangxu dynasty's folk kills had a base style written with the Kangxi era, and some of the late Qing dynasty's pastels also had Ming dynasty styles. There were many styles from the previous dynasty, but they could not be considered imitations. Looking at it 100 years later today, apart from the porcelain of the Qing dynasty, this type of late Qing porcelain is currently the mainstream product for collecting Ming and Qing porcelain, and is collected by many antique beginners. Moreover, many porcelain pieces from the Guangxu period are also very exquisite and have certain collectible value. Lu Yi was a few meters away from a second-hand store, pointing to a pile of porcelain in front of the store door. The porcelain was a base plate with a bean green glaze made in the Jiaqing period of the Qing dynasty, and he quietly said to Black Charcoal. "These plates are real, they are old, from the year of Jiaqing. But the several colored flowers painted on it are from now on, and were later added with colored materials in order to deceive foreign devils into making money. Jiaqing bean green glazed plates are usually too plain without patterns, which foreign devils don't like. In order to sell more money, antique dealers would ask their masters to fill the plates with colorful decorations. It looks good, these are considered fake and have no meaning to buy." Walking all the way, Lu Yi taught and Black Charcoal remembered with heart. Chapter 8. Antique Speaking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. While strolling around, when he saw a place selling antiques, Lu Yi stopped and taught Black Charcoal how to distinguish and explain some basic antique knowledge. The Fengqing area has a long history, with human survival dating back 10,000 years. From the current unearthed records, from the Hongshan culture thousands of years ago, to the later Shang and Zhou dynasties, Spring and Autumn and Warring States periods, Liao and Jin dynasties, Ming and Qing dynasties, each civilization has left behind many tangible objects. These physical objects are antiques, now also known as cultural relics. These artifacts cover various types of stone tools, pottery, jade, bronze, porcelain, and so on. Each period also has its own characteristics. These old objects unearthed for various reasons can almost be seen in the Fengqing antique shop at that time. Although at that time it was not as clearly subdivided as it is now, and there were no names for various cultural periods excavated in modern archaeology. But experts can basically tell the approximate age and authenticity of things at a glance. All the characteristics of an antiques era are reflected in itself, including its workmanship, shape, color, texture, writing, and soil characteristics, which are actually very clear. To borrow a quote from World War II war correspondent Kappa. "If your photos are not taken well enough, it's because you're not close enough." And for antiques, if you don't understand them very well, it indicates that you haven't delved enough into their research. Antiques can speak, they can coldly mock our ignorance. After strolling through the antique shop, they strolled into a shop selling Western watches, which was decorated luxuriously. At that time, imported goods were very popular in the late Qing dynasty, and there were sales stores in cities with relatively prosperous domestic economy. The upper class also took pride in using foreign goods, and clocks were one of the popular imported products among the Chinese people at that time. After Black Charcoal entered, he stared at a pocket watch. The guy was very enthusiastic and didn't judge people by their appearance. Perhaps because Black Charcoal had just changed into a new outfit, the assistant noticed the extraordinary demeanor of a few people and began to introduce them attentively. This pocket watch has a sparkling golden shell, adorned with gemstones of various colors, and paired with golden chains. It is very gorgeous and exquisite. I guess what Lu Yi took them to is equivalent to a luxury goods store now. Black Charcoal has never seen such a thing in the mountains. He was born in a place where only chickens crow at dawn, plow at sunrise, and rest at sunset. He felt surprised at the pocket watch and his eyes were straight. Seeing his expression, Lu Yi smiled and shouted to the boss to pay the price. He took out money to buy a pocket watch for each of the three of them. The price of a gold watch was not low, and it was not affordable for ordinary people at that time. The buddy patiently taught how to use black charcoal, set the time for it, and even provided a brocade box. The black charcoal on this watch was kept close to me, and it is said that it walked very accurately. When my grandfather told me this story, he said that he still remembered the appearance of this pocket watch, but the chain broke and it was a later accessory. He saw that there was a perpetual calendar on the watch. I was very young at the time, and I didn't quite believe it. I thought that Tai Gong was lying to me, or that Tai Gong was old and confused, and I made a mistake. How could there be a perpetual calendar on a pocket watch 100 years ago? You know, at that time, we Chinese people were still smoking big cigarettes. Later, at a Christie's auction, I saw an 1885 pocket watch with a perpetual calendar on it. It wasn't until then that I believed in Tai Gong's words. At that time, Tai Gong had been dead for many years. I remember the introduction to the pocket watch at Christie's auction stated. W.G. School 18K gold hunting pocket watch with a chronograph, perpetual calendar, lunar and lunar phases displayed on the dial. Made in the UK in 1885. I can't remember how much this pocket watch was auctioned off. When Black Charcoal and his companions went shopping, it was around this time, and over 100 years later, we were telling their stories from 100 years ago. 100 years later, who will remember what stories we have? In the evening, Lu Yi and his companions found a place nearby to eat hot pot-boiled lamb. They didn't drink much and returned to the inn to rest early. At night, the sky began to darken again and there was no thunder. Sixth Lord lay on the heated bed of the inn, closing his eyes and recuperating. He's waiting for a bigger storm. Black Charcoal and the others all returned to their rooms, playing with this pocket watch. On the shining golden case, there are red and blue gemstones embedded, exquisitely crafted, and some unfamiliar words, which later became known to be in English. His thoughts have flown into the distant future, and he envies the extravagant ability of the sixth master. He is also grateful for the love and care of the sixth master for him. Although he is not yet his master, he has already regarded Lu Yi as his master. He also wants to be proficient in all kinds of antiques like sixth master in the future, understand everything very well, and be able to see through the truth at a glance. He even dreamed that in the future, he would buy a big courtyard house in the capital, a car pulled by 3 horses, raise a talking octopus, and marry a beautiful woman like Lu Yi woman. Black Charcoal suddenly remembered that Sixth Lord seemed to have never mentioned women before. Black Charcoal also drank alcohol, hugged the box containing the pocket watch, and slept soundly. Just like when we were children sleeping, holding on to the beloved toy we just received. The next day, there was no news. Old Li went to Changzi's place but couldn't find anyone, so he didn't know where Changzi had gone. On the third day, as it approached evening, there was still no news from Changzi. Old Li was a bit anxious, and his personality was also a bit anxious. He was not so calm when faced with things. It seems that personality doesn't change much with age, as he paced restlessly back and forth in the room. Today, he didn't go out to find Changzi. He was waiting for Changzi to arrive. Changzi had agreed with him to come to the inn to find them. This is the last day, and he dare not go out, afraid of finding someone to separate from Sixth Lord and what might happen to the inn. Lu Yi is still closing his eyes and recuperating. He knows that things have changed. Changzi didn't feel like Lao Li would give him face, he was already prepared to take action against Lu Yi. Gold has always been a source of trouble since ancient times. These days, the fourth brother always carries a suitcase and takes it wherever he goes, never leaving the gold in the inn. Before, I used to go out with Lu Yi mostly using silver bills and coins, and rarely touched gold bars. This time, I was walking on the street, surrounded by trees and grass. These days when I go out, the fourth brother always walks in front with a suitcase in his arms, because walking in front allows everyone to see what happens clearly at a glance, making it easier to react quickly. Lu Yi even regretted whether he should come to Fengcheng and have the idea of using these boots. However, this thought was fleeting, and soon he entered a state of readiness because he heard old Li knocking outside the door. "Sixth Lord, Changzi is here. Open the door, I am old Li." Mr. Lu opened the door, and when fourth brother and Black Charcoal heard the sound, they all came out from next door and entered Mr. Lu's room. Changzi came in and sat on the chair, without holding the pair of iron jars in his hand. His face was slightly scratched and swollen, his eyelids were a bit blue, his eyes were a bit evasive, and his expression was very unnatural, as if he had been beaten. Lu Yi looked at Changzi and said, "Where are we going to see the goods and when are we going? Now I can take you there." "When I go back," they also agree. "Everything is ready, and Sixth Lord humbly reduces the price. Come to our place to see the goods and then negotiate the price." Changzi suddenly spoke very seriously, and he didn't speak recklessly like last time. He didn't even know where to learn a single word, which sounded awkward. Lu Yi was slightly surprised, but did not show it and said, "Okay, then you lead the way. How far is it? Do you want to take a carriage?" "It's a bit far, let's take a ride." "I'm riding a horse." "I'll lead the way ahead and walk slowly, you follow me," said Changzi. "Okay," said Sixth Lord, instructing fourth brother and Black Charcoal to take everything with them and leave the room. Fourth brother went to tie the carriage, prepare all the hay and daily water for a few people. Fourth brother looked up at the sky and it was getting dark. Fourth brother knew that this inn would not come back to stay. Lu Yi, Lao Li, and Black Charcoal got on the carriage, put down the curtains of the carriage, and fourth brother followed Changzi with the carriage. Soon, they left the city. The dirt road was always spacious all the way, although it was a bit bumpy. Besides being a bit wet, it was not difficult to walk. At that time, there were no asphalt roads, and most roads were built with rammed earth. After walking for half an hour, on a large open space, I saw a large white yurt with 8 or 9 horses tied to a simple stable next to it. Changzi stopped in front of the yurt, jumped off his horse, tied it to the stable, and said to his fourth brother, "Here we are." The fourth brother also stopped the carriage. He didn't get off, so he sat on the carriage, holding a whip in his hand. He couldn't leave the carriage. Turning to the carriage, he said, "Sixth Master, here we are." Sixth Master, Old Li, and Black Charcoal got off the car. After Black Charcoal got off the car, he took out his pocket watch and looked at the time. The pointer pointed to 6:30. After getting off the car, Lu Yi stretched lazily and looked around. It was empty, with a few crows chirping. "It's getting dark, night is falling. A crescent moon hangs leisurely on the horizon, with a few bright stars shining brightly as they gaze at the world. It's a bit cool in the wilderness in the evening." Lu Yi walked ahead with a suitcase, followed by Lao Li and Black Charcoal, and the three of them closely followed Changzi. As soon as I lifted the door curtain, I lifted my leg and entered the yurt. Chapter 9. A Golden Boot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Felt tense, autumn wind, and overgrown grass, the night moon at Qionglu listens to the mournful flute. The Qionglu written by Yuan Dynasty poet Ma Ziyuan in the Yuan opera, Autumn in the Han Palace, is a yurt. History records. Whenever a shepherd is limited to nomadic activities, they live by water and grass, and their migration is unpredictable, they always take the dome as their dwelling place. This kind of canopy life can shelter them from wind and snow, and can prevent tigers and wolves. Qionglu, in Manchu language, is called Mongolian bow. It is commonly pronounced as bao and is often referred to as Mongolian yurt. Mongolian yurts are usually built on grasslands and inhabited by herdsmen. There are still hundreds of miles away from the grasslands here. How could there be Mongolian yurts? Lu Yi guessed that it was the Mongolians who temporarily set up residential councils here, and the construction time was not long. Has the Mongolians also arrived? He remembered the Mongolian prince that old Li had told him. Lu Yi and a few others walked into a yurt, which was not small and could accommodate more than 20 people. Although it appears to be a temporary construction, the interior decoration is magnificent, covered with felt and carpeted on the ground. There are several tables, several low tables, and the tables are filled with wine and meat. It's not dark yet, and there are several lights inside, not dim. 8 or 9 people are sitting, holding wine glasses, eating meat and drinking. Among the few people, 2 of them looked Han, both of whom were in their 50s or 60s. One had a big belly, the other was thin and wore Han clothing, while the other few were Mongolians wearing Mongolian robes. Several Mongolians had machetes beside them. Seeing Lu Yi and a few people enter, a Mongolian man led by him bowed and raised his hand to signal that Lu Yi and the others should all sit down. He said a few more Mongolian words to the people around him, probably arranging for Lu Yi and a few people to eat and drink together, with very polite language. Lu Yi knows some Mongolian and can understand what he is saying. Lu Yi and Chang both found a seat to sit down. I heard you also want these boots. My name is Chagan and I come from Mongolia. How do you call me? The Mongolian leader said to Lu Yi that he knew how to speak Chinese. This Chagan is in his 40s, of average height, slightly overweight, with a big pancake face, a wide forehead, and squinting eyes. He held a wine glass, his cheeks slightly red, wearing a Mongolian robe, and a gold ring on his wrist. My surname is Feng, yes, I am very interested in these boots. Mr. Lu remained neither humble nor arrogant, and politely bowed. Oh, Brother Feng, we have this boot in our hands, but we only have one. I heard that the other one is from a wealthy merchant family in Jiangnan. I would like to invite Brother Feng to go to Jiangnan together, and we can also get that boot. After the matter is completed, the golden mask belongs to you, and a pair of silk scrolls also belong to you. Money, you don't have to give it to Changzi and his team. Our prince gave it to you on your behalf, and we only need boots. Chagan was also very straightforward in his speech, not beating around the bush. Judging from his tone, these things were already in their hands, and he didn't take Changzi seriously. Lu Yi didn't expect this to happen, he didn't answer, and he didn't quite understand the specific meaning of this investigation. He picked up his glass and fell silent for a moment. Continue listening to Chagan. Our prince has known about this boot for a long time. It was dug up by the southern barbarians several decades ago, and we used to think that both had been dug up. Our prince has been looking for that southern person for many years, and recently we have also found it. This royal tomb has a strong connection with our royal family, so he was determined to retrieve the golden boot. However, not long ago, Changzi and his companions opened the tomb again and took out one. Our prince has been paying attention to the royal tomb in this area for many years, receiving information and sending us to retrieve our boots. We arrived here and found Changzi. We saw that they were plotting to set up a trap and plan to seize your gold. We caught him and took Changzi and his mother hostage. Today, I forced him to go to the inn to find you, Chagan said slowly. Oh, then your prince knows that boot is in the south, why don't you go and take it directly? Why are you still looking for me? Asked the 6th prince. He thought to himself, what connection could the royal tombs of the Khitans have with you Mongolians hundreds of years ago, but he just wanted the golden boots, which sounded grand. This matter is a long story. The southern family is a tomb-raiding aristocratic family. Every heavy weapon they steal will be counterfeited several times. Even top antique experts are difficult to distinguish between true and false, and they are hidden in places that are difficult for outsiders to access. Even if we find boots, we may not be able to distinguish which one is real. So I would like to ask for your kind assistance. Don't worry, we won't have any ulterior motives for you. Gold, our prince has plenty, we only need boots. Chagan spoke very sincerely. Oh, what if I don't help? 6th master asked. If we don't help, we won't force it either. We know that Brother Feng has a lost daughter, and we know where she is, Cha Gan said slowly. Lu Yi stood up without speaking, his eyes fixed on Cha Gan. Cha Gan looked at Lu Yi expressionlessly. How do you know I have a daughter? Asked Sixth Master. Brother Feng is well known in the capital city, and the Liuli factory is recognized for his excellent eyesight. Our prince has heard of him for a long time, and it is not surprising that he knows something about Brother Feng. I just didn't expect us to meet here, and Brother Feng also came up with the idea of golden boots. I originally planned to disturb Brother Feng in the capital once the matter here came to an end. Now, it seems that it's better to save time. Cha Gan's statement is logical. Lu Yi snorted but remained silent. Is this family very tricky? I haven't heard of it before. I often go to Jiangnan, said Sixth Lord. It's quite tricky, their leaders' whereabouts are uncertain, and their family has many local industries, black and white, and they have everything they need. They started by robbing tombs and now specialize in antique counterfeiting. The authenticity of the things they make is difficult to distinguish, and they are also related to the court, so we cannot force them check and answer. Where are the boots that Chang Zi made? I want to take a look, said Sixth Master. The boots and scroll were in my hands, and the golden mask was in the hands of another accomplice of Chang Zi. He ran away, and a few of my subordinates had already chased him. Come on, let's drink first and chat while eating. Cha Gan stood up and picked up his wine glass. This Cha Gan speech is not repulsive, it's a bit straightforward, perhaps because Mongolian people have such innate personalities. Lu Yi stopped talking, he roughly understood the background. When Chang Zi failed to meet him the next day, he was already under their control. Cha Gan broke through the conspiracy trap that Chang Zi and his companions were preparing to deal with Lu Yi, and kidnapped Chang Zi's mother. Cha Gan also obtained the golden boots and silk scroll. It seems that Cha Gan has helped Lu Yi resolve the danger. Don't underestimate the cunning and scheming of petty people. The despicable behavior of petty people can often give a fatal blow to someone as proud as Sixth Lord. Lu Yi looked at Chang Zi beside him, and Chang Zi lowered his head without making a sound. When the person we went out tomorrow comes back, take back the golden mask, and this person will handle it. Cha Gan finished speaking and took a sip of wine. Chang Zi felt very panicked when he heard Cha Gan say this, and saw that Cha Gan meant to kill him. His mother is still in the hands of these Mongolian people, I don't know where to lock her up. He was both scared and anxious, wanting to beg for mercy, but felt unsure if begging for mercy would backfire. Quickly calculating how to escape, the hand holding the wine glass trembled slightly. After everyone finished 2 bowls of wine, Cha Gan whispered a few words to his opponent. A Mongolian took out a wooden box from a box, checked and opened it. A golden light flashed, revealing his golden boots. Cha Gan stood up and walked to Lu Ye's side, handing it to him. Lu Yi also stood up, holding his golden boots, and leaned under the lamp. Carefully examine and examine. The golden boot is woven entirely of gold pieces and threads, with exceptional fineness. Although gold wire is very soft, it has not undergone much deformation for thousands of years. It is about 1 foot high and the tip of the boot is embedded with a large red gemstone. There are several tourmalines on the side of the boots, all purple, red, and blue. The inner lining is lined with fabric, and the connection between the fabric lining and the golden boot is connected with gold wire. Although the fabric lining is slightly yellow, it does not decay. 2 golden dragons are carved on both sides of the boots, attached to the boots. The gold pieces on the shoe upper are carved with auspicious clouds, and the gold pieces on both sides of the boot barrel are carved with 4 golden dragons. The golden dragons have 3 claws, and the dragon patterns under the light are very fierce and ferocious. After carefully examining for a while, Lu Yi handed it to Cha Gan, who knew it was genuine. The quality of gold, the craftsmanship of fabrication, the inlay technique of gemstones, the size of boots, and the characteristics of dragon patterns are all fine, typical of the Liao Dynasty royal burial standard items. The gold boots of the Liao Dynasty royal family were mostly made of gold pieces and gold foil, but these boots were mostly made of gold wire, adorned with gold pieces and inlaid with gemstones. The craftsmanship was complex, and they were indeed treasures. At this point it was already very dark outside, and under the flickering lights, the golden boots looked even more luxurious and exquisite. The gemstones flickered brilliantly under the lamp, and everyone's eyes were fixed. Black charcoal is the first time a treasure from hundreds of years ago has been seen. And the first time I went out, I saw the golden boots of the princes of the Liao Dynasty. Chang put down his boots and looked a bit proud. Another silk scroll was taken out and unfolded a foot long. The silk was as thin as cicada wings, and there was a meticulous painting of a Liao Dynasty nobleman hunting on it. The painting depicts several people riding horses and hunting, with eagles on their arms and hunting dogs following them. Several attendants make shouting gestures, and the characters are all dressed in chitin Liao costumes, with hair combed in buns, and their expressions are lifelike, and lifelike. On one side of the scroll, there are several lines of chitin script written, which no one knows. The scroll has been preserved for thousands of years without any decay or discoloration. It is said that this was discovered by Chang in the ear chamber of the underground palace. It was not damaged and there was no visible day, so it was well preserved. And these people also know how to preserve silk-woven items after excavation, and they are as new as they were hundreds of years ago. What is more amazing is that the ink color of the scroll penetrates the silk, and the other side is the same picture, but it is the opposite mirror image. The fineness of the brush is amazing. If it weren't for the reverse text displayed on the back, it would be almost impossible to tell which side is front or back simply by looking at the screen. There are many treasures in this world that are shocking to the world, and the skills of the ancients are beyond our imagination. Everyone came over to admire the treasure together, all stunned and silent for a moment. Chapter 10. The Sky Like a Dome. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Everyone stood up and watched carefully, while Chang sat motionless in his seat, waiting for an opportunity to escape. He just heard from Chang that this tomb has a connection with the prince, maybe their ancestral tomb. Don't even think about negotiating any price with these Mongolians. Digging their ancestral graves is already good enough to save their lives. As for his mother, he didn't know where to lock her up, and he couldn't control it anymore. Moreover, he knew that these people were just trying to obtain the treasure and might not really kill his mother. He squinted his eyes and pretended to be drunk, but in fact, he was waiting for an opportunity to escape. But there are always two Mongolians drinking at the entrance, so he definitely can't run out. Even if he ran out and was surrounded by empty space, he wouldn't be able to run far and would probably be caught, which would be even more tragic. Check and put away the scroll and golden boots, then repack them and put them in the box. To Lu Yi, he said, if Brother Feng can help us go to Jiangnan to retrieve another boot, as our prince said, this painting will be considered a reward. Lu Yi thought to himself that these people cannot be trusted. He will temporarily accept them and then plan for the future. What he was thinking in his heart was that boot. Although this scroll was also a priceless item, he was determined to get the boot because it had important uses. Today, I heard that these Mongolians know about their daughter's whereabouts. If they ask hard, they won't say anything. First, stabilize them and then slowly inquire. So he laughed a few times and said, "Okay, I see that Brother Chang is also a straightforward person. Although your prince has not met, he must still be trustworthy. I will go with you to Jiangnan and see the scenery." After speaking, he dried a bowl of strong liquor in one gulp. Chang and several other Mongolians also raised their glasses and took a sip, followed by Lao Li in black charcoal. Alcohol is a magical thing that can boost mood, relieve worries, and quickly create an atmosphere in social situations, bringing relationships closer. Besides, investigating these people has disrupted Chang Zi's conspiracy to plot against Liu Yi, and Liu Yi is also grateful. Emotions can be contagious, and everyone is of similar age and plans to go to Jiangnan to find that boot. The road ahead is long, I don't know what happened, but suddenly I feel a bit close. Although Liu Yi can be a bit gloomy at times, he is actually a bold and ambitious person, and his personality is not like that of a businessman. Men can empathize with each other or become friends at first sight. It is also possible that they may conflict with each other as soon as they meet, and if they don't agree, life and death may not be in contact. The feeling between people is very subtle. This Chagan has a very elegant style of conduct, and apart from his appearance, he doesn't look like a Mongolian at all. Of course, if he were a brainless warrior, I reckon that Mongolian prince wouldn't let him do these things either. When Chagan was drinking, his glass was full and he was extremely generous, and Liu Yi had a slight liking for him. During this period, the two Han people remained silent and drank alcohol, only symbolically. The two of them are between 50 and 60 years old, wearing clothes that do not indicate their profession. They only know a thin surnamed Wang and a chubby surnamed Zhang, and Liu Yi did not ask much. Chagan found out that the fourth brother was still on the carriage and called in, drinking a few drinks together. He smiled and said to sixth master, "I won't touch your carriage. You'll stay here tonight. We have a place nearby, and we'll stay there tonight." After 3 rounds of drinking, Chagan stood up and pulled out a knife holder to put on Chang Zi's neck. "Tie it up." 4 people from behind came to hold and tie Chang Zi up. Chang Zi did not resist, he knew that resistance was futile, and maybe this group of people would just chop him off with one knife. You see, Chagan is very respectful to Liu Yi, that's because Liu Yi has value in using them. And he, just a tomb thief, probably killed him casually. "Feng, that's all for today. Rest well and we'll discuss things tomorrow," Chagan said. "Okay, thank you, brother Chagan, for considering everything carefully for us, and also thank you for helping me resolve the danger. There is no way to repay it. Let's go down to Jiangnan together and strive for everything to go smoothly." Sixth Lord saluted. Subsequently, Chagan and Liu Yi briefly discussed the itinerary, then picked up the box containing boots and got up to leave the yurt. The attendant threw Chang Zi on the horse's back and a few people rode away. I left this yurt and a table of food and drinks for them. Liu Yi and his companions escorted Chagan's group away, while Si Gu loosened the horses, fed them water, and settled them in the stable. The stable is very simple and at first glance, it is also newly built. Mongolian people love horses, and every family has horses. Whenever they go to a place, the yurt is built, and the stable is also built. Black charcoal tidied up the table, dishes, and cleaned the carpet. He was living in a yurt for the first time, seeing the carpet for the first time, and everything felt new. He carefully examined the yurt. Mongolian yurts are a type of mobile housing used by ethnic minorities in the north. It is easy to construct, dismantle, and relocate, and can be carried by car. According to historical records of the Yuan dynasty, the large Mongolian yurt can accommodate 1,000 people and is extremely magnificent, as grand as a palace. The famous poet of the Yuan dynasty, Siduchi, wrote in his 5 miscellaneous odes to Xanadu. The sand garden is a 100-foot-tall building with brown fur, and the sky breeze sways the velvet hook to reveal the grandeur of the dome. And if you build a small yurt, a few people can complete it in an hour. It seems that this yurt will only be built in 3 or 4 days, but although it is rushed, every detail is still in order. The Mongolian plateau has strong wind in winter and spring, and rainstorm in summer and autumn. The conical felt top can reduce wind resistance at any angle and also quickly reduce the burden of rain and snow accumulation. The door faces southeast, in order to face the sun for good luck and to avoid the cold northwest wind. The umbrella-shaped roof frame surrounding the skylight shines like the sun and moon. Black Charcoal looked at the umbrella-shaped dome and took out the pocket watch that Sixth Lord had given him, feeling very similar. Indeed, it is said that the shepherd can calculate the approximate time by observing the angle of sunlight shining from the top. Liulichang, under the Een mountain. The sky is like a dome, the cage covers all the fields. The sky is vast and the wilderness is vast. The wind blows the grass low and sees cattle and sheep. More than 2,000 years ago, there was a record in the records of the Grand Historian. Biography of the Xiongnu, during the Western Han Dynasty, that the father and son of the Xiongnu were lying together in a dome. Black Charcoal carefully watched every detail of this yurt under the candlelight. What he has seen and what has happened in the past month has made him grow up rapidly. The fourth brother picked up the wine jar on the table, poured a glass of wine and dried it himself. He said to the sixth master, "I thought there would be a fierce battle, but I didn't expect to come and have a free meal. I've been listening to the commotion inside from outside just now. This drink is not tasty, I don't know what will happen next," said Old Li. Old Li said to Sixth Lord again, "The two Han Chinese people who have been silent all along, one of whom is chubby and familiar to me. This person is from the government." Changzi and the Mongolian lord knew the news so quickly. It should be they who told the story. They are eyeliner. The sixth master nodded. It was not important for him, and he did not rob the tomb. As for who the petty official was, it had nothing to do with him. The sixth master was prone to make such mistakes. Sometimes, he doesn't have enough guard against petty people. But he thought about every word Cha Gan said, carefully organizing his thoughts. A few people analyzed what had happened, and after a while, Old Li, fourth brother, and Black Charcoal all fell asleep. Lu Yi didn't feel sleepy, so he walked out of the yurt on his own. The sky was already very dark all around, quiet all around, with few stars and the moon appearing and disappearing in the clouds. Cha Gan, in order to avoid being noticed, built a yurt as a campsite to discuss and act here. There is not a single family within 10 miles, only a lonely yurt and a few old trees. Due to the rain 2 days ago, the air was still a bit damp, and the evening wind blew by, making it very cool. He had just finished drinking and was already a bit drunk, but in an instant he regained a lot of consciousness. He looked at the pitch-black distance and remembered a lot. He remembered the past, thought of Jiangnan, thought of his daughter.